Hi friends, it's Lauren Taylor. Thanks for joining me in my craft room today, and I'm excited to share with you some of the new Love and Valentine's Day themed products at the This Calls for Confetti shop, like the adorable Love Polymer Clay Mix and these beautiful opaque iridescent confetti in blush, pink, and scarlet. I also have the Love 6x6 paper pad, which features 2 of each design, and there are 12 designs total. I'm going to do a little bit of a flip through so you can see how fun all of these red, pink, and white themed designs are. Great for not only Valentine's Day, but maybe a card to send to a loved one or your Galentine. Lots of different love anniversary themed products and projects that you can make with these paper pads and different sequin confetti mixes. I'm also going to be using the new Chatty A2 cover plate die. There's also a coordinating stencil, but for today's video, I'll just be using the plate. And then I'm also going to bring in my A2 acetate sheet later on in the video. I have a piece of pink cardstock that I'm using from my stash. It's slightly larger than A2, so that way I can do my ink blending and splattering on this piece of cardstock and be able to die cut it out later with my A2 cover plate without having to line up any of my edges to the edges of the die. I'm starting with a light pink cardstock, but I want to bring in some darker pink and red colors, so I'm grabbing Distress Oxides and some Dome Foam blenders. I'm going to start with Candied Apple at the end of my cardstock and bring that color from one side more towards the center of the piece of cardstock. And then I will bring in Worn Lipstick to be my middle color, so going from Candied Apple and blending that into the softer pink cardstock. I do have a bit of a harsh line, so I'm going to grab a brush that I just have in my stash, a blending brush, to try and soften that line a little bit. It doesn't have a lot of ink on it, so that way it will blend more into that lighter pink cardstock. Once I put away my oxides, I'm grabbing some watercolor pigments, and I'm going to use this bright pink with some water and a small paintbrush, and I'm just going to flick that watercolor onto my background so there is a subtle pink shine once my watercolor pigment has dried. We'll go ahead and clean up my desk, and then we'll move on to the next part, which will be grabbing a piece of this pattern paper, again the Love 6x6 paper pad. And I really love this white cardstock with the different colored red and pink hearts, so I'll go ahead and take that out of my paper pad so I can trim it to be A2 in size to be the back side of my shaker for today's project. So I'll grab my paper trimmer, and I'm going to trim this down to 5.5 by 4.25. However, I accidentally cut it down to 5.5 by 4.5, and I'll realize it pretty soon here that I need to trim off another 1/2 inch. My cardstock with my ink and splatter is dry, so I went ahead and ran that through my die cut machine. I'm going to recycle the border that I die cut, but I am going to save all of those little speech bubbles from the Chatty A2 cover plate for a future card. All of these little speech bubbles are going to be windows for my shaker, but I love all of those little speech bubble details, so I will just, again, save that for a future project. Here's when I realized that I need to cut off another 1/4 inch, so I'll go ahead and do that real quick, and we can move on to building our shaker. I have the back of my shaker, the cover of my shaker. Now I just need to add in the acetate. I'm grabbing one of my A2 acetate sheets from This Calls for Confetti, and I'll go ahead and peel off the protective cover of the acetate, and I'm going to add adhesive to the back side of my Chatty die cut piece, and I'm going to use a 1/8 of an inch adhesive and just line all 4 sides of my panel. I'm also going to put a few little pieces here and there in some of the large openings that are, behind my little Chatty speech bubbles. And I'm using my lift and release tool. There's kind of a pokey end to help me peel off the backing of all of my adhesive. Once those are all peeled off, I'll grab the acetate, line up the corners as it is an A2 piece of acetate, so I want it to fit just perfectly behind my cover plate die cut. Now, if for some reason I didn't get that lined up nicely, it's very easy to just trim down with a pair of large scissors anywhere where it sticks out past the edge of my cover plate die cut. Now, this calls for Confetti. It sells amazing strips of adhesive, but the Love mix, the polymer clay mix, has these little beads in there that are a little bit thick. So I'm going to grab some thicker foam strips from my stash instead of having to double or triple my foam adhesives from this calls for Confetti, but you can definitely do that if you don't have a thicker piece of foam adhesive in your stash. I trimmed it so I could fit it around all four sides of my frame, and then I will add in a bunch of pieces, again going all the way around to make sure all of my different shaker bits that I'm going to put in this card will stay secure inside. I'm going to take, and forgive my messy bun there, but I'm going to take some more foam adhesive, and for 3 of the speech bubbles, I'm going to make separate little windows. So I'm adding more foam adhesive, going around and trimming so that way I can create 3 little separate windows on the inside of my shaker. Once I have all 3 of those done, it will be time to add in the best part, which is our polymer clay mix and our opaque iridescent confetti. I'm peeling off all of the release paper so that way I don't risk losing my shaker bits when I need to peel off the release paper to close up my shaker. I'm going to start with adding in my Love polymer clay mix, and I'm adding all of these little bits to the largest area within the shaker. So not the 3 little separate speech bubbles that I made, but the rest of my shaker panel. I noticed that the little pink circular sphere bits inside of this mix were just a little too thick for this style of shaker, so I peeled those out, and then I'm going to add in the white ones. I thought that they would still move around pretty well inside of this shaker window, and then I'll go ahead and place the bits that I won't be using back inside of my resealable pouch. Now for the 3 little separate windows, I'm going to bring in the pink iridescent confetti and put that in one of my speech bubbles. Then I brought in blush and finally Scarlet to complete all of my little shaker windows. I love that these pouches are resealable so I can save the rest of these confetti mixes for a future project. I'm going to grab my Misty here just as a tool to help me line up my shaker panel together. I'm sliding it into one corner and then grabbing the backing and lining it up in the corner as well, so that way I know that it is straight and perfectly placed behind my shaker. I'm giving it a good shake to make sure none of my confetti or clay mixes are coming out of the sides or accidentally mixing together, and it looks like I did a pretty good job. I trimmed the Love You words from one of the papers in the Love 6x6 paper pad, and I'm going to use some adhesive to attach these to a piece of white cardstock. I'm leaving a little bit of space around the words, and then I'll use my paper trimmer to cut some straight lines, and I have a Love You sentiment to add to the front of my card. I'm going to grab my foam squares. These are the double-sided adhesive foam squares from This Calls for Confetti, and I added foam adhesive to the back of my sentiment. I'll use my grid on my mat here to try to get my sentiment as centered and straight as possible onto the front of the card. After that, I went ahead and added it to a top folding card base, and I also added a cute little rainbow and envelope from the Love paper pad that I just fussy cut and put on the inside of the card. I hope you enjoyed this look at the Love products from This Calls from Confetti, as well as the Chatty A2 cover plate die and how you can use all of those products together. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll click like, and if you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe and come back. As always, you can find everything I use down below in the description box. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye!